Alright, let's do a little bit of a demo for the aiming system. I have a physics-based aiming system now. So character has rotation speed, and well, he doesn't go instantly towards the cursor. So it's a top-down shooter, but essentially there's a little bit of recoil and a little bit of, we could say, imprecision with how you're aiming. Because of the fact that he's rotating towards the cursor, he's not looking at the cursor. This means that if you shoot, all right, and there's a little bit of recoil that I've set up on this weapon, so if I shoot, naturally the aiming line will move, right, unless I'm actively controlling the recoil. Now, this gets interesting when you move the camera a little bit, right? So at the moment, there's this purple line that goes from my gun towards a certain direction. That is where my sight is set at. So like the distance is set at. I mean, the purple line is where I'm actually looking at. The yellow point is where my sight is set up, and the red point is where I'm actually aiming. Which means that if I hold the aim button, then the center of my screen becomes the place where my sight is set up as. And of course I could technically just go closer and then it's harder to aim, but you still have the options to go closer if you want. But it also means that if you're looking at a distance, right, since you're looking really far away, the angular, the size of the angle gets smaller and smaller as you aim farther and farther, which means that the spread naturally gets better. Also, I'm trying to remove the stats. Yeah. So it gets easier to aim at if you're aiming, which is kind of the point. But it also means that if you change the maximum range your thing is set at, so instead of being 5, let's say we're doing 15, right? If you're doing 15, then you're going to aim farther, which means that it's going to get harder to shoot people that are close to you because you have to gauge with this kind of weird thing. It still works, but it's not ideal, right? If you want to shoot someone that is not in the correct range, you can hip fire, right? So this mode still works. This mode always works. But your sight is set at a certain range, and that's the optimal range because that's naturally where your cursor and your camera will be set up, right? That also means that if you're looking at like a really far away target, then you can shoot at them pretty easily. This also applies to stuff like, let's say, a really long range. You can shoot at someone that's off screen with this thing, which is kind of cool. Let's say the max range is something like 30. And then I'm over here and I'm playing the game normally, right? And I have like the hip fire accuracy of someone shooting the gun normally. I can still aim and have like a various range if I want, but I can aim pretty far. Let's say I go back closer to this thing. I can shoot that like the corner of this thing pretty easily. If my bobbing that is still a little bit crazy gets better. You can aim at the corner of this thing pretty easily. Also, the camera. Don't worry about the camera; it's a little bit a little bit crazy at the moment. I need to set up a camera so it doesn't do that, but like kind of rotate in space. But it makes it so aiming at the correct distance gets easier and easier, right? So the angular distance over here, I'm aiming super far, which means that the spread is kind of big at this distance, but the spread is considerably less when you're shooting at someone close, right? So you could aim down sight for someone close, you just wouldn't see them. And if you go back, you see that the spread is actually kind of tight. And the ability of having a physics-based system is you can do some cool stuff, like this is currently a box collider, right? It could be a capsule, which would make this easier, but I can roll on the wall. Yeah, so the fact is, if I'm held up against the wall, then it changes my aim when I kind of move side to side, which means that I can do stuff like peek corners. So I need to set up a proper system for this. This is like the raw interpretation of what the inputs are doing. there would be like some assistance with this thing. But you can peek a corner if I do it properly. I need to set up this system properly, but you can peek a corner. And stay in cover for most of the time, right? Right now I'm shooting through the wall itself, but kind of see the dynamic that's going on right now, which is that you can hold yourself up on obstacles to steady your aim, and that applies if you're like aiming towards another direction, right? So let's say I have like a lot of bobbing right now. If I hold myself up on the wall, the bobbing stops because I'm getting friction on the wall itself, which means that if you're held up against an object, well, your recoil is better. That applies to windows too. Let's say this is a window. It's just a really thin wall, which means I can shoot through it. But let's say it's a window. It's the same principle. You would have a lot of sway, and then you hold your gun on the window still, and oh, better spread. And it applies when you're aiming too. So you're aiming pretty far and you're shooting. And you have like this kind of spread over here, and then you decide to, oh, I'm gonna hold my gun on the window still, and then there's a tight spread. It makes for some interesting mechanics, I believe. I still need to, dial in the bobbing. The bobbing's insane, but I still need to dial in the bobbing. But it's interesting. I find this system is probably worth looking into for like a specific type of, I would say, tactical top-down shooter with a little bit more of aiming involved than your regular top-down shooter, which is pretty much just point and click. Kind of a physics-based aiming system is probably better, or something interesting worth looking into.